We are good.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Pursuant to Executive Order number 20-05 issued by the Governor of the State of Rhode Island, this meeting will be conducted by electronic communication only. Members of the public wishing to access this meeting may do so at https://YOUTU:/BE/BJ9K39IBWI. I'd like to call to order and please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the new business is we're having a discussion and a presentation on ethics training. And I'd like to pass it over to you now.
Thank you. Thanks,
Okay.
everyone, and welcome. My name is Lynn Radicius. I am a staff attorney and the education coordinator for the Rhode Island Ethics Commission. I have a PowerPoint with me tonight. I am going to share my screen so that you can all view it as we go through this presentation. So I will be happy to answer any questions that anyone might have, but I do ask that you kindly hold your questions until the end. The reason for that is 9 out of 10 times a question that you're going to ask is going to be addressed in the next slide or two. Also, it will keep us on track so that we finish promptly this evening. So with that, welcome to an introduction to the Rhode Island Ethics Commission and the Rhode Island Code of Ethics. I want you to know that this is big picture stuff tonight that we're going to go over. There is no test at the end. You are not expected to memorize anything that you learn tonight. There is nothing that you hear tonight that won't be available to you at a later date if you go on the Ethics Commission website and look at the code, or even pick up the phone and give us a call and speak with someone at a later date, and you will get our contact information by the end of the night. So it's super helpful if you put yourselves on mute so that background noise doesn't accumulate and interrupt. And with that, we will jump right in here. So what you are looking at is Article 3, Section 7 of our state constitution, which addresses ethical conduct. And it says the people of the state of Rhode Island believe that public officials and employees must adhere to the highest standards of ethical conduct, respect the public trust and the rights of all persons, be open, accountable, and responsive, avoid the appearance of impropriety, we'll talk more about that, and not use their position for private gain or advantage. So this is Article 3, Section 8 of our state constitution addressing the Ethics Commission, its makeup, and the Code of Ethics. It says the General Assembly shall establish an independent, nonpartisan Ethics Commission, which shall adopt a code of ethics, including but not limited to provisions on conflicts of interest, confidential information, use of position, contracts with government agencies, and financial disclosure. And that's exactly what has happened. We do have an Ethics Commission with a code that includes all of those things and a few others. So before diving into the actual Code of Ethics for the state of Rhode Island, I wanted to orient everyone by talking about ethical conduct in general. So ethics is a standard or philosophy of right and wrong human behavior based on logical reasoning. So ethical conduct is the type of behavior that a logical person would agree is just the right thing to do under the circumstances. But people have different ideas about what makes behavior right or wrong. Let's look at a couple of ways of looking at ethics. We have ethics based on culture. You may have heard the expression, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, right? Many people think that whether something is ethical depends on the setting in which it occurs, taking into account the local culture, habits, customs. This is the way we've always done things. That's one way of looking at ethics. I will tell you that is not the way that the Rhode Island Ethics Commission views ethics, but we'll get to that. We have ethics based on consequences. You've heard of the expression, well, the end justifies the means, right? That's where ethical or unethical conduct is determined by looking at the results. And ethical conduct is behavior that results in more positives than negatives in both quantity and quality. Guess what? That's not the way that the Rhode Island Ethics Commission views ethics either. So how about this? Ethics based on character, where ethical conduct is determined by asking, what would a virtuous person do under the circumstances? The focus there is on one's character, one's motives. I'm a fine, upstanding citizen. How could I possibly violate something called the Code of Ethics? Even that, ethics based on character, is not the way that the Ethics Commission and the Code of Ethics in Rhode Island view ethics. So what is? We are asking you at the Ethics Commission to please focus on your action. Forget the result. The Code of Ethics tells us what actions to avoid without regard to culture, without regard to consequence, even without regard to character. Ethical or unethical conduct is determined not by looking at the results, but by looking at the conduct itself and judging its inherent rightness or wrongness. So a little bit about the makeup of the Ethics Commission. We have 9 members, and I'm happy to say that only just recently, in the past couple of weeks, we have had a full complement on the Ethics Commission of 9 members. We were down to 7 for a while, but we just had some new ones appointed, and we're at a full complement of 9. The members of the Ethics Commission are appointed by the governor. The governor selects 4 of his or her own choosing, and the governor also selects the other 5, but from lists of names that have been submitted by the leaders in both the House and the Senate. Okay, we have a wonderful group of a mixture of different types of people on the Ethics Commission. There are a couple of attorneys. We have a physician on the Ethics Commission, a Catholic nun, a real estate professional, a college professor. So it's a neat group. And take a look at how powerful the Ethics Commission is. They have advisory, investigative, adjudicative, and in some instances, removal powers. I am told that the removal powers have not been exercised. Quite frankly, if someone's in enough hot water with the Ethics Commission that they could possibly be removed, chances are they've stepped down on their own first. While serving on the Ethics Commission, its members are prohibited from holding or campaigning for public office. They may not hold office in any political party or in any political committee, nor may they participate in or contribute to any political campaign. Okay, not so much as a sign on the front lawn of someone on the Ethics Commission during election time. Okay, and it's the same for the staff. I'm a member of the Ethics Commission staff. You may be familiar with my boss. Our executive director and chief prosecutor is a man named Jason Grammett. Before Jason rose to the level of executive director, exactly 3 years ago, he had my job for about 20 years. He was education coordinator and a staff attorney. So there are a total of 5 attorneys at the Ethics Commission. We have 3 investigators, all of whom are former police officers or detectives, know their way around an investigation. We have our financial disclosure officer, Michelle Berg, who is always there to lend a hand with financial disclosure reporting. And with ancillary support staff, there are 12 of us, and we are at 40 Fountain Street, and I will provide you with our contact information in a later slide. So who is subject to this code of ethics anyway? Let me tell you, all elected and appointed officials and employees of state and local government, of boards, commissions, and agencies, all subject to the code of ethics. So conflicts of interest. Conflicts of interest and nepotism are pretty much the bread and butter of the Rhode Island Ethics Commission. We address other matters. We will cover other matters tonight, but conflict of interest is a big one and nepotism is a big one. So I like to jump right in with conflicts of interest. So any person subject to the code of ethics, that's you, that's me, may not participate in any matter in which he or she has an interest, financial or otherwise, which is in substantial conflict with the proper discharge of his or her duties in the public interest. So to understand this, you need to know what a substantial conflict of interest means. That occurs if it is reasonably foreseeable, I'll tell you what that means in a minute, that he or she, any family member, any business associate, or any business by which he or she is employed or represents will derive a direct monetary gain, or even suffer a direct monetary loss by reason of his or her official activity. So I will tell you now that the Code of Ethics does not discriminate between financial gain and financial loss. The concern is if an action that you take in your public position is going to financially impact any of these people that I just mentioned on your slide. Okay, someone might say, you know, Lynn, I might have a conflict of interest, but if I take part in this, I'm going to take a hit financially. So I'll take one for the team, and it shouldn't be a conflict if I lose money. It absolutely is a conflict, even if you lose money. Okay, so what does reasonably foreseeable mean? That means that the conflict of interest need not be certain to occur, but the probability has to be greater than conceivably. So that's a lot of airspace for reasonable foreseeability. So the Code of Ethics will talk about your business associates in a number of different provisions. So I wanted you to have a working knowledge of who your business associates are. For purposes of the Code of Ethics, your business associates are persons or entities with whom you are joined to achieve a common financial objective. All right, let's look at some examples. Your business partners are your business associates. That's a relatively easy, straightforward one. People you have hired, such as your attorney, your accountant, your realtor, your contractor, those are your business associates. Okay, the Ethics Commission has determined that the landlord-tenant relationship is one of business associates. Also, this one, it's very important. Any businesses or organizations, even not-for-profits, if you are an officer or serve on the board of directors, and that's regardless of whether or not you are paid for your service. So business associations do not remain ongoing forever. So I wanted you to have some idea of what the Ethics Commission looks at if they are trying to determine the existence of a business association. They're going to ask, are the parties conducting ongoing business transactions? Are there outstanding accounts between the parties? Is there an anticipated future relationship between the parties? Any one of these three will trigger an ongoing business association. You don't need all three, but any one will trigger. So remember a couple of moments ago, I said that your realtor is your business associate. If you sold your house in 2015, okay, and you used a realtor, there was an open house, hopefully a bidding war, you got more money than you ever thought possible, and you've been living happily ever after since in your new home with no plans to move or use that or any other realtor. If that realtor comes before you in your public capacity, 6 years later, probably not your business associate, okay, barring any other relationship that you might have subject to the Code of Ethics. But if your house is for sale now, even if you had an offer, you're waiting for the closing, and that realtor that you used comes before you in your public capacity, that's conflict of interest territory, and you have and you need to recuse. Okay, so also, in addition to business associates, the Code of Ethics will often speak about your family members. So you should know who your family members are for purposes of the code, whether by blood, marriage, or adoption. There's your list. Spouse, parents, children, siblings, grandparents and grandchildren, aunts and uncles, nieces and nephews, and your first cousins are your family members. Before you ask, your ex-spouse is not a family member. I get that question every time. So someone might say to me, what about friendships, Lynn? Does the Code of Ethics monitor friendships? I'm a lot closer to my best friend than I am to my sister. Well, the code does not monitor friendships because it can't. If you think about it, what would the commission ask? Well, did you meet in kindergarten? Did you date in high school? Do you take each other's kids back and forth to practices? Do you talk on the phone 3 times a week, 3 times a year? Too difficult to gauge. So think back. Remember that first slide or two when I said that the Constitution wants us to avoid the appearance of impropriety? Recusing, if a friend appears before you in your public capacity, would be a great opportunity to exercise that, the option to recuse to avoid an appearance of impropriety. Okay. You know, and if someone says to me, I haven't spoken with my brother in 6 years. If he comes before me in my public capacity, I'll no more go out of my way to help him than I would to hurt him. I'd treat him like anybody else. No conflict for me there. I shouldn't have to recuse. You still do, regardless. A family member is a family member, regardless of the status of your relationship at any given time. So think of it this way. A conflict of interest is a situation where a person's public duties and private life intersect. And I know I said at the beginning that you don't have to memorize anything, and I stand by that. But if you leave here tonight remembering anything, please make it this. It is not unethical to have a conflict of interest. It does not violate the code of ethics to have a conflict of interest. Okay, said the woman from West Warwick with 31 first cousins. Okay, it's not the conflict that's the problem. The potential problem is the failure to identify and then manage your conflict of interest. And we at the Ethics Commission help people do that every single day. So, do I have a conflict of interest? Here's what you're going to ask yourself. Is it reasonably foreseeable? Okay, more than conceivable, less than certain. Is it reasonably foreseeable that a decision that I'm helping to make as part of my public duties will result in a financial benefit or detriment to me, someone in my family or household? How about my outside employer or my business associate? Ask yourself, even if there's no financial impact, is a family member, a household member, an employer or a business associate a party to or participating in the matter that's being discussed here? If the answer is yes, you have a conflict of interest and you must recuse from participation in that matter. So the actual act of recusal is relatively simple. We ask that you complete what's called a statement of conflict of interest form, sometimes called a recusal form. Those should be available at your city hall. If not, you can find them online at the Ethics Commission website. You fill it out right as you recuse. We ask that you present the original to your presiding officer or whoever appointed you or your supervisor, and do send us a copy at the Ethics Commission so that we know that you recused when you needed to. Nepotism. Again, another hot topic with the Ethics Commission. Let's jump into nepotism. You may not participate in any matter as part of your public duties if there is reason to believe or expect that any person within your family or a household member is a party to or a participant, will derive a direct monetary gain or suffer a direct monetary loss, or somehow obtain an employment advantage. Okay, now these prohibitions apply regardless of whether or not your family or household member is absolutely objectively the most qualified candidate for a job, absolutely deserves that promotion. That may be the case, and it may still happen for that family member or household member, but it's going to happen without your participation. The policy underlying the prohibitions against nepotism recognizes it's just really, really difficult for any person to be truly objective when considering matters that impact family members and household members. And again, don't forget that constitutionally founded goal of avoiding the appearance of impropriety. Do we think that you could conduct yourself without bias if a family or household member appeared before you? Totally not the point, whether or not you can or cannot. The Code of Ethics and the Ethics Commission removes from you any responsibility for having to defend yourself and taking action in a matter that's going to impact a family member, okay, by just taking it off the table. So let's look at some examples of nepotism. This is not an exhaustive list, but gives you an idea of when nepotism exists. We mentioned this one briefly: hiring someone in your family or your household, okay? Awarding a contract to a family or household member, that would be nepotism. Any decision regarding a family or household member's property. The appointment of a family or household member to a financially remunerated position. And we talked about this one too: participation in a disciplinary matter in which a family or household member's employment is at risk. Okay, those are all examples of nepotism. So here's a scenario that I use at every training. I know that you're a school committee and not a town council, but this should resonate with you as well. And for people that aren't elected or appointed officials, it's good to know, have some idea of what is expected of the people that we put in office. So this is something just to think about in your head for a moment. Andy is a member of the town council. And the town has just released a request for proposals, or an RFP, for the construction of a new municipal playground, okay? Billy is Andy's nephew. And Billy's got a construction company that submits a bid in response to this RFP. I'm going to ask you 3 questions. The first, and you just need to answer to yourself. The first, does Billy need to withdraw his bid because his uncle's on the town council? That's one question. Next, as long as Andy announces at the beginning of the meeting that his nephew has submitted a bid for this RFP and he's completely transparent about it, can he still participate? Third question, does Andy, knowing that his nephew has a construction company and he's going to put a bid in for this construction, does Andy just need to recuse completely 100%, start to finish? So if you answered number 3, that Andy must recuse from all aspects of the bid selection process, you're absolutely right. Let's look at those other 2. Billy's got a construction company. Why should that poor kid have to withdraw his bid? He doesn't have he's not subject to the code of ethics. He's not the one with the conflict, his uncle is, okay? So Billy can still put his bid in. As for Uncle Andy just being completely transparent, which we love at the Ethics Commission, that option's meant to sound like it might be good enough, but it really isn't, okay? Just announcing that he's your nephew before I take part is not enough. That's a family member, right, under that family tree you looked at. And Andy just can't take part in this particular matter. They'll have to do it without him. More on nepotism. You may not participate in the supervision, evaluation, appointment, classification, promotion, transfer, or discipline of anybody in your family or household. Okay, you may not delegate to a subordinate of yours any of those tasks either. I'm sure you understand why. If you can't do something, you can't get your assistant to do it, okay? The Code of Ethics does allow the Ethics Commission to approve what's called an alternate chain of command if there is a situation where 2 people in the same family are working together. This happens a lot on local police departments, fire departments, jobs that draw people that are similarly interested in public service. So keep this in mind, generally speaking. The person that's going to step in for the person that has the conflict of interest in this alternate chain of command has to be of equal rank or higher to the person that has the conflict. Also, this alternate chain of command may not be presumed acceptable prior to the issuance of a duly authorized advisory opinion from the Ethics Commission. And you will leave here knowing what that is, when you might need one, and how to get one. Recusal. People will say to me often, Lynn, if I recuse from a public meeting, do I have to leave the room? So here's the thoughts on that. Recusal does not mean that a public official must leave the room if it's an open meeting. Although I'll tell you right now, that's best practice. That's what I recommend anyone do who's recusing from a public meeting. Do you have to? No. Should you? Absolutely. Do yourself a favor. At the very least, you have to leave the table. Someone might say, isn't it enough that I sit at the table with my nameplate down and my hands folded and my mouth closed? It is not enough. Your presence at that table lends an appearance of participation. You can stay in the room, but the last thing you want is for you to recuse during a public meeting, go take a seat in the front row, and then have somebody accuse you of trying to, send signals to the people left at the table. What if you innocently text somebody on your phone, I'll be home at 9 o'clock, and at the same time, somebody at the table that's still taking part gets a text, and someone in the audience says, oh, that person just texted that person. Leave the room, come back after the matter's over if you want to do yourself a favor. That's open meeting. If a public body is in what's called executive or closed session, once a public official has recused, he or she has no more right to be in that room than any member of the public and absolutely must leave. C is for contracts. We'll breeze through this quickly just to review it. No person subject to the Code of Ethics may enter into any contract with a state or municipal agency unless the contract has been awarded through an open and public process, including prior public notice and subsequent public disclosure of all the proposals that were considered and the contracts awarded. Now, there are certain contracts for professional services which are customarily awarded without competitive bidding. Those are not subject to competitive bidding, okay, if they're awarded through a process of public notice and still there's a disclosure of all the financial details. Some examples of those contracts for professional services appear on the screen. Might be for physicians, attorneys, engineers, architects, accountants, land surveyors, and psychologists. That's not an exhaustive list. There are others, but you get the idea. Secondary employment, sometimes called moonlighting. Okay, many of us have a second job in addition to our state or municipal employment, but there are some rules surrounding that. Under the Code of Ethics, you may have a private or public sector job in addition to your state or municipal position. However, keep in mind, you may not accept outside employment that does either or both of these two things. It cannot impair your independence of judgment with respect to your official duties, nor may it induce you or require you to disclose confidential information acquired in the course of your official duties. So there are times when someone might seek an advisory opinion from the Ethics Commission to ask whether or not they can take on a second job. So I wanted you to have some idea of what the Ethics Commission considers when they entertain those requests. They're going to look at the nexus between your public duties and your private employment. They want to make sure that that work for the second job is going to be completed outside of your normal work hours without the use of public resources. An official or employee may not appear before his or her own agency. The work has to be conducted outside of areas over which an official or employee has decision-making jurisdiction. And an official or an employee may not use his or her public position to solicit business or customers for a private side gig. Okay, here's an example that I use. A social worker from DCYF, Department of Children, Youth, and Families, state employee, subject to the code. So we have a social worker that does a wonderful job during the week taking care of children in state care. On her own time, she loves dogs. She loves dogs so much that she's going to start a new little business, walking dogs and boarding dogs for people who go away. What she's not going to do is make up a little business card for her dog business, right? And put on her DCYF email or phone number on that card. She's not going to run flyers off on the copy machine at DCYF and post them in the elevator, advertising her job. And she's certainly not going to be visiting a child in foster care at a foster home on a Friday. And as she leaves, she spots a cute little puppy in the corner and says to the foster parents, see you next week. And in the meantime, if you ever need anyone to walk your dog or board your dog when you're away, please take my card. This is what I do on my own time. Example of what not to do. Okay, secondary employment. This should come as no surprise to anyone. You may not use or disclose for financial gain confidential information acquired in the course of your official duties. Okay. On to gifts. Just to take a breather here and tell you that this is a lot of stuff. I do not expect you to remember half of it. What I'm hoping you'll do is be prompted in the future to know when you might need to talk to us more. Okay. Don't worry about memorizing this stuff. I'd rather have you introduced to a little about a lot than just come in and focus on one or two things and have you miss a lot of others. So on to gifts. If you participate in making decisions, right, you may not accept cash or forgiveness of debt from interested persons. I'll tell you who they are in a minute. You may accept things of value up to and including $25 per instance and $75 per year per interested person. So what the heck is an interested person? That is a person, business, or representative that has a direct financial interest in a decision that a public official or employee either makes or participates in making. Okay, so the Code of Ethics has a $25 limit. All right, let's say that the city of Warwick says, yeah, we get it, Ethics Commission. You can't have public officials taking gifts from people that have interests in decisions that they make, financial interest in a decision that they make, but $25, that's really low. Won't get you a sandwich and a cup of coffee. We'll have a gift provision, but we're going to make it $100. Okay, can't do that. All right. Some municipalities or state agencies or other public agencies, they have a zero tolerance policy on gifts. The Code of Ethics doesn't require it, but I'll tell you, it's a nice, clean one, easy to remember, right? No gifts at all. If your municipality or agency or has a zero tolerance policy on gifts, or even one that is more strict than that in the Code of Ethics, that's the one you have to follow. Okay, so that's gifts. Transactions with subordinates for public officials. You may not engage in a financial transaction. By that we mean private employment or consulting, giving or receiving loans, monetary, political, or charitable contributions with an employee, contractor, or consultant over whom you exercise supervisory responsibilities. Okay, there are some exceptions. Financial transactions in the normal course of a regular commercial business or occupation, or if the subordinate is the one to initiate the financial transaction. Okay, or for certain charitable events that are sponsored by the highest official or governing body of the state or municipality. All righty. Now, no person shall solicit or request, directly or through a surrogate, political contributions from a subordinate for whom in that official or employee's official duties and responsibilities, he or she exercises supervisory responsibilities over that subordinate. Okay. Now, there is a First Amendment right that allows people to make political contributions to whom they please. So this does not prohibit or limit the First Amendment right of a subordinate to make a political contribution. If you pare this down, what it means is you can't seek a political contribution for someone you supervise, but the code's not going to stop that person from making a political contribution to you that was not solicited. All righty. Revolving door. There are several revolving door provisions in the Code of Ethics. They are meant to prevent elected and appointed officials from kind of cashing in on relationships made and things learned during the terms of their public service without a cooling off period first. So that's the revolving door. So here's one revolving door provision. No elected or appointed official may accept any appointment or election that requires approval by the board over which he or she is or was a member to any position that carries with it financial benefit. Okay, now that prohibition continues for 1 year after termination of one's membership on a particular body. All right, here's another one. This is for members of the General Assembly. No member of the General Assembly shall seek or accept state employment not held at the time of the member's election while serving in the General Assembly and for a period of 1 year after leaving legislative office. That's another revolving door provision. Here's one more from municipal officials. No municipal elected official or school committee member, whether elected or appointed, because it's done differently in different towns, while holding office and for a period of 1 year after leaving municipal office, shall seek or accept employment with any municipal agency in the municipality in which that official serves. Okay, the exception is for employment that was held at the time of the official's election or appointment. Okay, these are the things that advisory opinions are made of. And again, we'll get to those very shortly. We're moving right along here. You may not represent yourself or anyone else before the agency that you are a member of or employed by, or any other agency for which your agency is the appointing authority. Okay, you may not serve as an expert witness before your own agency. And these prohibitions continue for 1 year after you leave your public office or public employment. By representing yourself or others, here's what we mean. Participates in presentation of evidence or arguments before that agency for purposes of influencing the judgment of that agency. Okay. There's an exception. The Ethics Commission may grant what's called a hardship exception. That would allow you to represent yourself before your own agency. To get one of these hardship exceptions, you need to request an advisory opinion from the Ethics Commission. Let me tell you the most popular one. Okay, these advisory opinions practically write themselves at this point. Someone on the zoning board in a particular municipality Someone in the zoning board wants to put a shed in his backyard at the house that he lives at. And he needs, he's got a problem with the setback requirements, so he needs to get a variance. Where do you get a variance? From the zoning board. I'm on the zoning board. How can I go to the zoning board to get a variance to build my shed if I can't appear before my own board? That's an example where the Ethics Commission might say to this person during an advisory opinion, tell you what, you can appear before the zoning board that you're a member of to try and get a variance so you can put a shed in your backyard. But I'll tell you what, you're not going to take part in the decision. You're going to recuse, right? And you're going to let everybody know that you got an advisory opinion saying you have permission, but you have to recuse. Okay. I'll tell you who's not going to get a hardship exception. Someone that, let's say, joined the planning board in November of 2020 and gets a tip on a hot piece of property 6 months later, buys it with a business partner, wants to turn it into a $1 million industry, a commercial business, but needs to go before the planning board. Not going to happen. You know when you can pursue that? When you've been off the planning board for a year. Okay. Complaints. We're just going to go through this quickly. People do file complaints at the Ethics Commission, and they're never filed by your friends. I can tell you that. So I just want you to be somewhat familiar with the process. Anybody can submit a complaint to the Ethics Commission. All right. It's got to be on a form provided by the Ethics Commission. They need to be signed under oath, an original signature, so no anonymous complaints. They have to name the individual alleged to have violated the code of ethics. We call that person the respondent. The complaint has to identify the respondent's public office and detail the specific acts which allegedly violated the code. A complaint is not public unless and until it's accepted by our executive director, and the complainant is not a party to the action. You should also know that an ethics complaint is civil in nature, not criminal in nature. Okay, we talk about prosecution and violation of the statutes, but it's civil, not criminal, before the Ethics Commission. Not to say that a respondent might not be in some hot water with the Attorney General's office, okay, or even the U.S. Attorney's office on the same matter, but separate and distinct is the ethics complaint. So prior to filing an ethics complaint, potential complainants are encouraged, not forced, to just pick up the phone, speak with one of the investigators at the Ethics Commission and say, you know what, I'm thinking of filing an ethics complaint against somebody. It'll give you a chance to, vent about it and say what you're thinking about doing before you commit it to paper. It'll make sure that you have the right documents to do so. And you might even speak with one of the investigators about, whether or not it might stick, the charges might stick. No one's going to tell you don't file it. No one's going to tell you you better file it by the end of the day. Just an opportunity to speak with someone first. Initial determination is the first stage of an ethics complaint. It's a really low bar at initial determination. The Ethics Commission is going to get together. They're going to look at the complaint and the complaint only and try and determine whether it alleges facts that, if they're true, that'd be sufficient to be a violation of the law. Okay, they meet in closed executive session, and the Ethics Commission at initial determination is either going to dismiss that complaint right out, or they're going to authorize a full investigation. Okay, so that's a low bar. At any time following initial determination, the Ethics Commission and the respondent, they can reach some sort of an agreement or a settlement. Okay, these things don't have to go to full adjudication, but any settlement that the prosecutor and the respondent come to has to be blessed by the Ethics Commission. All righty. Advisory opinions. This is, we're closing in toward the end here, my friends. So advisory opinions are a large part of what I do for the Ethics Commission, along with my friend and colleague, Theodora Papa. So Teddy and I draft roughly 95% of the advisory opinions that go out of the Ethics Commission. So I want you to know, again, what they are, when you might need one, and how to get one. An advisory opinion is a legal interpretation of the code of ethics. It gets issued by the Ethics Commission. It provides specific guidance about a particular and impending circumstance. And it's based on the representations of the petitioner. The petitioner is the person who's asking for the advisory opinion. In a nutshell, what this means is the Ethics Commission is not going to opine on a hypothetical. You're not going to get an advisory opinion on a hypothetical, because these things really turn on very specific facts. And also, they're based on the representations of the petitioner. If we get your request for an advisory opinion and I call you up and say, I appreciate your letter, I just have a few follow-up questions, anything you tell me is what I'm going to consider gospel. I'm not going to hang up from you and have somebody check out the facts. The facts are what you tell me they are, okay? And you can rely on them to the extent that they're accurate. Now, I've never had a problem with that yet. So who can request an advisory opinion? Anybody subject to the code about a particular provision of the code which affects him or her, okay? The time to do this is before you take official action. A couple of reasons for that. Better an advisory opinion today than a complaint against you tomorrow. Also, the Ethics Commission does not opine on past conduct, only prospective. So you're not going to seek an advisory opinion to ask whether a vote you took last September was A-okay, because you think it is, but you'd love to have it in writing. Time to do that would have been before you took the vote, okay? Also, the person who seeks the advisory opinion, it's got to be the person upon who that opinion is going to be binding. So you're not going to seek an advisory opinion on behalf of your sister-in-law, who is a school teacher and wants to know if she can do A, B, and C. Happy to answer the question if your sister-in-law seeks the advisory opinion. So how do you seek an advisory opinion? To get one of these things, you have to either mail or hand deliver to the Ethics Commission a letter containing your original signature. Before I go on to the information we need, let's address this. During the pandemic, forget having to mail or hand deliver a letter or even have your original signature. We are accepting these requests and in fact encourage them via email. You will get an address a little bit later. Regardless of how you get your request to us, here's what we do need. I need your name, your phone number, your email address. Briefly, the name, jurisdiction, and powers of your agency, commissioner, office. I need to know your official position, a description of your duties, the nature of the potential conflict, a summary of any relevant facts, and do let us know if you have any time constraints. The reason we say that is because the Ethics Commission generally meets twice each month, sometimes once a month in the summer especially, and always on a Tuesday, always at 9 in the morning. And so we try and address the requests for advisory opinions in the order in which they're received, but sometimes somebody can wait for one. They don't need it right away. And other times somebody's really anxious to get their advisory opinion heard. So we try and accommodate in that way. The Ethics Commission has been meeting via Zoom since April of last year, and it's been going very, very well, especially for our friends on Block Island, right? You can just dial up and attend an Ethics Commission. Forget driving to the big city and finding a place to park, at least for now. So after you submit your request for an advisory opinion, you're going to get a letter or an email saying, yep, we got it. You're going to get a draft recommendation prepared by a staff attorney. It will say draft on it, okay? It's not an advisory opinion unless and until it's approved by the Ethics Commission. You are strongly encouraged to attend the hearing at which your request will be entertained. A couple of reasons. One, it's very interesting to see how the process works. Two, the commissioners might have a question for you. And if the attorney can't answer it and you're not there to answer it, it may have to get continued to another day. You might have questions for the Ethics Commission, all right? You do need an affirmative vote of 5 commissioners to approve your advisory opinion. That's regardless of how many you're sitting, all right? You're going to get a written copy. It's going to be available on our website, and both your advisory opinion and your request seeking it are public records, subject to an APRA request. Okay, a couple of quick things before we move on. Our website has advisory opinions dating back more than 20 years. They're organized by year. So you are encouraged to look through them if you have a particular question and you're thinking of submitting an advisory opinion request. So you might go on our search bar, type in a couple of terms, and up pop 5 or 6 advisory opinions. You read one of them from, say, 2018, and you say, holy cow, that's my question. I mean, that's my exact question for the Ethics Commission. I'll just see what they did here, and I don't need an advisory opinion. Please don't do that, okay? do read it and get an idea of which way the wind's probably going to be blowing for your advisory opinion. You might even see us cite that advisory opinion in yours. But the only person who can rely on any advisory opinion is the person for whom it was written. Okay. All righty. Financial statements. Who's required to file a yearly financial statement? Here's the list. We do know that all municipal elected officials do and certain municipal appointed officials do. If you need to file a financial disclosure statement, you're aware of it already because we know who you are and we send reminder after reminder after reminder. Okay. If you have a question, if you say, gee, I don't file a financial statement, I wonder if I'm supposed to, give us a call. We'll let you know. Or check with your clerk. If your clerk doesn't know, we can help that person too. So the purpose of financial disclosure, let's talk about that for a moment. I assure you, it is not intended to harass or annoy or disturb, okay? These statements help ensure that people acting in the public interest are not using their public positions to further their private financial interests, okay? They help identify conflicts between a public official's financial interests in his or her public office. They increase the overall transparency in government appointments and decision-making. And what's wrong with this? It helps further the public's confidence in government. No one's going to ask you what you paid for your house. No one's going to ask you how much money you have in the bank. That's not what these statements are about. We're looking for relationships. Okay, when are they due? Well, I hope this is no surprise to you. They're due the last Friday in April. So if you haven't filed yet, you're late. But guess what? No one's waiting to drop a complaint on you tomorrow because you haven't filed on time. If you haven't filed yet, please just do it. You can probably expect a phone call if you don't from someone in our office saying, did you forget? Did you know you had to file? Is there anything I can do to help you get this thing filed sooner than later? So that's when they're due, the last Friday in April, or within 30 days of somebody's appointment to a public position, or within 30 days after filing a notice of organization with the Board of Elections, or declaring yourself as a candidate, whichever of those two comes first. All officials required to file financial disclosure have to continue to do so until they've been out of office for a full calendar year. Okay, we encourage everyone to file online at the Ethics Commission website. Here's our website address, okay, right on the screen there. It's a lot easier because the computer will retain your information. You need only go in and update it each year. Some people prefer to do it paper and pen. If that's your bag and that's how you want to do it, give us a call. We'll send you a paper file. But please do it online if you can. And if you need help, I've seen my colleagues on the phone with someone, actually sitting with them through every question to help them through it. So we're here to help you in that regard. This is us, the Rhode Island Ethics Commission. We are at 40 Fountain Street in Providence on the 8th floor. Our telephone number is 222-3790. We work from 8:30 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. We do ask that during the pandemic that you not drop in without giving us a call first. If you are inclined to stop by the Ethics Commission for any reason, just give us a call to make sure that there's someone there to meet you and that everything's operational that day. There are 12 of us that work at the Ethics Commission. On any given day, 3 or 4 of us are in the office and the rest of us are teleworking from home. Although we check our voicemails twice an hour and our email constantly. So we have not missed a beat throughout any of this. You have been so patient and attentive, for which I'm grateful. And we did come in at under 7 o'clock. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. I'm going to stop talking for just a minute and see if anyone has any questions. Let me tell you this. If you do, terrific. If you don't, not a problem. This is a lot of stuff to sink in. Some people will call with a question a day or two after a training, once it's sunk in. Other people prefer to ask their question in private. That's fine too. But if anybody has a quick question, I'm happy to answer it at this time. I think we're a small enough group where you could just unmute yourself if you have a question. Just want to make sure I'm not missing anybody. I don't see any raised hands.
Madam Chair.
Miss Bacchus.
Hi there.
Hi there.
Who has a
Karen
question?
Bacchus.
Oh,
Karen
hi
Bacchus.
there. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm well, thanks.
My question is,
with the revolving door jobs, how come so many people get jobs right out of, they'll work for the state or something, and then all of a sudden, or they're on a commission, all of a sudden they're a judge, they're this, they're that.
Yeah. The revolving door provisions are pretty particular about what type of job you can take and what type you can't. So someone might go from, a municipal position to a state position that might kind of snake its way through without any problem. I think, Karen, that those things are going to be looked at on a case-by-case basis and turn on the actual facts of any particular instance.
Thank you.
Of course.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Cornell.
Yeah, so I was just curious. So if you don't appoint somebody or are not responsible for appointing somebody, are they still considered your subordinate? Because I saw a lot of things, financial, like transactions between subordinates, but school committee.
Yes, a subordinate could be someone who answers to you, whom you did not appoint. When I mentioned the term appointing authority during the slides about appearing before your own agency, that example would be if the town council appoints the zoning board, okay, then someone who's on the town council not only can't appear before the town council, but can't appear before the zoning board because the town council appoints the zoning board. So someone can be your subordinate, even if you did not appoint that person, if that helps.
Okay, yeah, because recently, like, school committees lost their appointing power, so they technically only appoint the superintendent. So, like, for example, directors, teachers, and all of our school department personnel. So would they still be considered subordinate to the school committee?
That's a very good question as to whether teachers are subordinates to school committees. Calling Andrew Henius.
So I think that wouldn't necessarily, my opinion anyway, be covered by the code of ethics necessarily. That would be more dictated by the terms of the collective bargaining agreement and Title 16.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, don't want to extend this too far. I'm just curious, like, how that change would if that would affect anything.
Sure. If a particular matter comes up, Nathaniel, about which you have a question, give us a call. We'll try and talk through it.
Thank you. Like, it's nothing like personal with me. I'm curious because, like, that's a new big change with the school districts, and I'm just curious how the ethics thing would affect that, if at all. But my question has been answered, so thank you.
Okay, sure.
Madam Chair?
Yes, who is that? Oh, Kyle.
No, that's Councilman Sanabi.
Oh, Mr. Snoppy. We don't have you on the screen. I didn't even know you were here.
Sorry.
Welcome.
Is it all right if I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So when it comes to municipal government, how you have the executive branch and you have the legislative branch. So for instance, city council, if any of the members of the city council appear before a member of the executive branch or a subordinate of theirs, is that any conflict?
A city council member appearing before an agency over which they don't have appointing authority,
Correct.
that should not be a problem.
All right, good.
These are all generally speaking. I should mention that, anything that I would say during a training conversationally, or if we had a phone call to talk about things, nothing is binding on the Ethics Commission. So that's kind of my little disclaimer here, if you will. So no one could leave and say, well, Lynn said it's okay for a city councilor to appear before an agency where they weren't the appointing authority. There could be some other matters tangled up in that, but generally speaking, I can say that to you. I hope that helps.
It does. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? I don't know who's here now. People aren't on the screen.
No one else is here.
Okay.
Okay, well, I think I can get you off to your meeting in reasonably good
Thank you.
time. And this has been a pleasure. I've been dying to get into Warwick, and I'm around if you need me, and even if you don't. Okay.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We appreciate it.
My
You did a
pleasure.
nice